your homework, teacher sign a piece of paper says you can come in, you're good to go. So for the remaining 2 years, I cut all my classes in high school, but I was smart enough to give the teachers whose classes I was cutting the pottery I made, and they gave me passing grades. That's how I got out of the place. And Frank Ross said, "You're too smart to die. I don't want it on my conscience. I'm leaving here and you're going with me." Now, this is a very important point that I am intentionally sharing with you. The crying is good, not bad. That's a good sign. I got into the University of Pittsburgh on probation because no one in my high school had ever shown me the scholastic aptitude test. So when they put this test in front of me at Pitt, I flunked the test. Well, not only did I graduate from Pitt with honors, I'm now a trustee of the University of Pittsburgh. I actually sit on the board that let me in on probation. And I was the commencement speaker in front of 13,000 people. And I got up and said, "Don't give up on the poor kids. They might end up being a commencement speaker." And basically, that's the story. That's the whole point of me standing here in front of you, that there's nothing wrong with these children, that affection and good food and sunlight can't cure. Now, I got 13 honorary PhDs. I lectured at the Harvard Business School, and I used to come in and out of Minneapolis because I was a 727 airline pilot, and I flew for Braniff in the 60s. This is from a kid who flunked the entrance exam to the University of Pittsburgh. So there's nobody on this planet that can tell me what these children aren't capable of doing, Dad. But environment drives the whole process. And there are people who have asked me to sort of forget that part of my history. I'm not forgetting anything, because that's the point of the story. Okay? All right, next slide. So we do clay. Next slide. This is all kids' work for the public school system. Next slide. These are all the kids with no ability, supposedly. Well, what we discovered, these kids have plenty of talent, but you got to give them the tools so they can show you what they're capable of. Next slide. Next slide. This is a mosaic project that we did. I brought in a woman who had studied the mosaic techniques of Rome. I brought her to Pittsburgh to teach these kids. Next slide. This is a piece the kids did for the schools. These are all the inner city kids, suppose they don't have any ability. Next slide. We do photography, digital imaging, and film. Next slide. This kid's working for Disney. You took that picture. Next slide. This is the gallery for the kids. This is our concept of how to treat children from the inner city. We even have their parents come to the art openings. In the old days, we'd have these shows, and we'd have a formal food presentation, a museum quality invitation for every kid. And they would exhibit, and we couldn't get their parents coming. So one of my buddies got off on the saving souls, including the parents. And we started picking up the parents like we picked up the kids. The last show, we had 200 parents show up. We didn't pick up one parent. Because now it's not cool not to show up to support your kids at the Manchester Craftsman's Guild. People think you're a bad parent. There's no statistical difference between white mothers and black mothers and Asian mothers and Hispanic mothers. Mothers will go where their kids are being nurtured every day of the week. So we got that problem figured out. Next slide. This is actually an old slide. Before I got real sophisticated with my little PowerPoint, I actually had slides in a box with duct tape on the corner and a slide projector. And I got called out to a place called the Silicon Valley. So I showed up on the slide projector, and these people looked at me like I was on Pluto, man. That's cool. I blew off the desk, plugged in my slide projector, gave them a little presentation. And the lady come out of the audience, she said, "Man, what a fabulous presentation. My only criticism is your computers get a little bit old." Well, I'm not a high-tech guy. They all look about the same to me. I said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" She said, "Oh, I help run a company called Hewlett-Packard." I said, "Well, my dear, there's an instantaneous solution to this problem." Long and short of it, HP gave us $1 million and a systems engineer to go with it. And we now have one of the hippest digital imaging centers east of the Mississippi River. And I'm putting kids into the Rhode Island School of Design and Pratt right out of the imaging center. But I keep this slide in here for nostalgia reasons, and you never know when an Apple representative might be in the audience. Next slide. This is what HP and Steelcase built. This is called a school. This is how you're supposed to treat your kids. So we got this thing going big time. Next slide. I also stuck a music hall in the north end of the building while I was building it. And I'm very glad I did, because a fellow named Dizzy Gillespie dropped by. And I asked Dizzy Gillespie, "Why would you come to a black-run school in the middle of the inner city of Pittsburgh that doesn't even have a reputation in music. He said, Billy Taylor told me a black guy built and I didn't believe him. Let's see for myself. And you're too young to appreciate what you've done here, but I'm not. And you ought to build one of these centers in every city in America, and I'm going to help you do it. I said, well, Dizzy, you came in, that's enough. He said, no, I'm going to allow you to record the concert. I'm going to give you the rights to the music, which he did. And a piano player named Herbie Hancock showed up, and then Winton showed up, and Ellis Marcellus, Winton's father, showed up, and Shirley Horn, and Betty Carter, and Nancy Wilson, and the Basie Band, and Paquita de Rivera. We just finished up Herb Alpert last month, and it's been an interesting ride. We now have 600 recordings. The most important collection of contemporary jazz recordings in the world is in my center in Pittsburgh. And we recorded Joe Williams before he died. And there was a very interesting exchange between Joe Williams and I. He came to see the center, and he said, now I know why Dizzy was talking about you, man. Whether you like it or not, you've been picked. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, you're bilingual. You have the ability to speak to the people who are suffering in the community, and you have the ability to speak to people who can solve the problem. So we're going to help you, man. And so Joe allowed us to record him, and he died about 6 months after that. So we have his last recording in life. Next slide. That's the place all filled up with rich people on opening night. If you'd have dropped a bomb in that room, you'd have wiped out all the money in Pennsylvania because it was all filled up, including my mother and father, who were right here. And they're deceased now. They're dead, but they lived long enough to see their kid build a school in the neighborhood and open it up black tie. The next night, I had the neighborhood come in. I had the same food both nights. Why? I wanted to establish the principle that you don't have to have a tuxedo on to be treated like a world-class citizen. And I knew people start talking about that, so we now sell out all of our concerts in subscription 3 weeks after the season's announced in the middle of the inner city of Pittsburgh, and we've never had one act of vandalism, a fight, theft, nothing of any form in over 22 years of operation. Next slide. Just in case you thought I was lying, he was there. Next slide. That's Billy Taylor and a guy named Jerry Mulligan. Next slide. That's Pat Metheny and Jim Hall. Next slide. Paul Simon's engineers designed this acoustically perfect recording studio. Next slide. And Nancy Wilson did back-to-back Grammys with us. And for her second Grammy, 20,000 people, she stood up and said, thank God for the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild and for Marty Ashby and Bill Strickland, those guys, because they have the presence of mind to preserve this music for future generations. Because the music of Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong and Duke and the rest of them is part of the cure for cancer. That music can get you home. And we're going to make sure that we preserve it for future generations so they know who these people were. Next slide. These are all children from the Pittsburgh Public School. When they reach third grade, they come over for jazz. And the place is swinging. We do Flintstones and Batman to jazz, and they love it. And when McCoy Tyner came, they got a chance to meet McCoy Tyner playing our Steinway piano that we bought with Ahmed Jamal in New York. And people said, well, why'd you buy a Steinway? I said, because the kids deserve one. That's why I bought it. And so they all know, when they walk into the place, exactly where we're coming from. Next slide. Now, this was burned out during the riots. I had to look at that going to work to the center I've been showing you. So next slide. I had a cardboard box built to hit the streets again. That's a 60,000 square foot medical tech building in the middle and a 40,000 square foot greenhouse. Next slide. I built that building. And I also filled it up with tenants. And it makes money in the highest crime rate neighborhood in Pittsburgh. And we've never had one incident since it's been open. So the point of the story is you can get downtown rental rates in the middle of the inner city if you do it the right way. Next slide. Next slide. University of Pittsburgh Medical Center took a piece of their billing operation, moved it into my building. I borrowed $8 million, built the building, and think makes money. Not one racial incident since we've been open. Zero. Next slide. Here's the entrance to the building, Citizens Bank's in there. Next slide. This is my concept of how to build buildings for people in the inner city. Next slide. And those aren't plastic, those are real. Those are called orchids. And the reason I have them in my building is I grow them. Next slide. In that greenhouse.